Hey everybody, Matt Colville here. The final draft of the Strongholds and Followers manuscript has been sent to our layout artist, which means we are in the final stages of getting the book prepared to send to people. And as a result, I can start getting caught up on all the things that I've been putting off in the meantime. For instance, this is the monthly Q&A video for August. And for those of you who aren't really concerned with what time in the year it is, it's October, by the way. It's a couple of months after August. So this is something I want to do every month. Every month, Marcus Brownlee does this, and I'm heavily inspired by him. He does a Q&A every month where people ask questions, and I thought we were going to do that, but then I underestimated how much work and crunch was going to be required from me to get the manuscript done, and so we've been putting this off, and so we've got a lot to catch up on. You may have noticed, for instance, that we did 3 running the game videos right in a row, one every week for 3 weeks. We did running evil characters and splitting the party and fudging die rolls, and they were super successful. And at the time, I thought, "Yay, we're back! We're going to make a video every week." But then, of course, I had to ramp up on finishing Strongholds and Followers, and that's how this is going to work probably for a while. Probably, I'm going to guess until late in this year or early next year, because every time we start working on a new project or a new thing or ramp up finishing an old thing, it takes time away from the other stuff. So there's a whole long list of videos and topics and things we want to cover and do with this studio and with this team, but it's going to be a while before all of them are happening regularly. For instance, I'm about to spend a lot of time, I'm probably going to take a couple weeks off now that I'm done with Strongholds and Followers, and just devote my time to getting the D&D stream ready. And that's going to be where all of my thought is bent toward. And it's my intent to get a couple of running the game videos done in the meantime, but the stream, once we launch the stream and it's happening regularly, then we're going to start working on other stuff. So ultimately, we want to do a running the game video every week. We want the D&D stream every week, and the D&D stream is going to also create a campaign diary every week. And we now are playing live board games on Tuesday nights. So if you're not aware of this, because you follow me on YouTube, we play now Codenames every Tuesday night. I think we usually start between 7 and 8, and it's a blast. I love it. It's a colossal amount of fun. I think Codenames is the perfect game for this. It won't always be Codenames. We will play other games, but it's a great way for us to kind of blow off steam after having worked, all day, and invite some friends over, many of whom are going to be in the D&D stream. I think Codenames is kind of the perfect game for this because the people watching have all the information the players have, and you're not waiting for people. You watch in the chat and you can see that people are giving clues, and they're talking about what clues they would give if they were the captain. And the Twitch chat we have for Codenames, I'll put a link in the doobly-doo. The Twitch chat we have for Codenames, I think it's the best Twitch chat I've seen. It's amazing. No one is arguing about anything. No one's sniping at each other or trying to score points. They're just all having fun with us, watching us play and playing themselves. So by all means, if you normally just follow me on YouTube, I encourage you to come by Twitch, because we're putting up more and more content on Twitch, the live Codenames stream on Tuesday nights. And also, we've been playing a lot of NetHack recently. After I've been busting my ass all day and I want to blow off some steam, I'll just start live streaming NetHack at not any real schedule, just usually around 6 o'clock a couple of times a week. I say no real schedule, but this Saturday night, which is tomorrow night, Jerry, I just put you on the hook to edit this video and get it up today. Tomorrow night, we are going to be on Twitch. I'll put a link in the doobly-doo, 6 p.m. Pacific time. We're just going to hang out and play NetHack, listen to the Time Rider, play NetHack. We do this stuff all the time, and it's just a fun way for me to relax after having busted my all of my bits all week. That gives you some idea of the scope and scale of what we're trying to do. We want to keep doing running the game videos. We've got a D&D live stream to do. We're doing live games on Tuesday night. So far, just Codenames, but we'll do other games. We want to do edited game streams. We want to do stuff like we want to play Gloomhaven. We want to play this game, and we'll probably record ourselves playing it and edit it down to be something you can watch, because most games, I think, are not fun to watch played live, because you spend most of your time sitting around watching the players planning, which is not super fun. But you take that experience and you edit it down into curated content, and then I think you got something. And there are lots of other videos we are planning on doing. We have a whole other stage that we've built, our maker stage, so that our friends, and there are many of these people who like making things. They like, they're fashion designers who like making costumes, or they're they're prop modelers who like making props. We're going to bring them over. We're going to have them do this stuff on a video. Like my friend Brian, who wants to put together a full-scale replica front plate with all these red LEDs of this somewhat famous 1980s real supercomputer that was featured in a lot of science fiction movies. I don't know when we're going to do that. It's one thing at a time, and every time we start ramping up to something, other things start to trickle off for a while. But the idea is eventually all of these things will be happening on a regular basis as we learn how to use this space. Thank you for your patience, and hopefully next week running the game will be the video I promised about killing a character. People send us stuff, and also I buy things. We're going to cover a couple of those things today. People send us stuff mostly to say, hey, thanks for all the cool stuff you do, and a lot of these things are really cool and highly personalized, and they're neat, and I often just forget. I open them up and go, this is amazing, and I put it on a shelf thinking the next time I do a running the game video, I'm going to show it off, and then I forget, and so these things accumulate. For instance, I'll put a picture up here, somebody made and painted these miniatures for my character in NetHack. This is Tarna the Valkyrie, and hopefully up here, hopefully up here, you'll be able to see a close-up picture of this miniature, and it's awesome. You can tell she's a Valkyrie because she's got the horned helmet just like in real life, and there's the @ symbol on her shield, which will only make sense to you if you were actually paying attention to NetHack. So I love these. I think these are fantastic. I may find a way to use them in a stream. We'll see. Trogaff a while ago made, I think he models these himself, or he pays somebody to model these. These are these little skull crawlers. I'll put another picture of these up here. You know, I don't know if they're from something or they're an original thing he made, but they're pretty cool. Thank you. A gentleman named Brian Brazil hand makes these leather booklets, which I think are pretty cool. And he sent me this one. It's got a little tree on it. And he said, you could use this as the Codex Terranosis. And I'm like, this is way too small for the Codex Terranosis. It's a giant tome. But he also said, you could use it to put your spell cards in if you're a spellcaster. And I'm like, that is a cool idea. I would probably use that. And you can he makes these character diary things, and you can just get these pieces of paper anywhere. I don't know if he has a website. He just said, hey, I make these. Here you go. Thanks. But his name's Brian Brazil. You can look him up if you think these things are neat. I thought they were pretty cool. Thank you, Brian. Something else I was sent by our friends at Monty Cook Games. They give us a lot of great advice on our Kickstarter, and also we help them with the new Game Master month, which we're currently planning. I think it's supposed to be like January. Obviously, any program called New Game Master Month is up my alley. They sent us this, which is the deluxe edition of their game, their new RPG. It's a self-contained RPG. It's not based on D&D or any D&D system. I think it's the same system that Numenera runs off of, called Invisible Sun. And this, I don't know how much this costs. It's got to be a lot of money. It's crazy. It weighs a lot. It is incredibly heavy. It's got a ton of stuff in it. And it was described to me as, imagine if Harry Potter had been written by Philip K. Dick, which is a pretty cool pitch. Let's show this off. I think I feel confident in saying, much like I think that Ptolus was the best produced book that the industry has made, just in sheer terms of volume and quality of everything inside it. This might be the coolest RPG related thing I've ever seen. This giant black cube shows up at the office. I had no idea what it was. I open it up, and automatically I was kind of crazy in love with it. It's got this crazy glyph on top, and then you can see it's got tons of shit inside it, including it's got little drawers. It's very much like the Borg cube that I also bought. This is all one drawer, and inside there is a DM's envelope, and then what the hell is this thing? You have summoned the black cube, behold its treasures. Yeah, I'm down with that. And then this drawer has a 6-fingered hand in it for some reason. I don't know what this is. I think there's this is a prop, but I think that the fingers, in between the fingers, you're supposed to put a card. This thing is awesome. This thing is so heavy. And as soon as I opened this up, I was kind of like mesmerized. It looks like a lot of the game uses cards for special abilities and spells and stuff like that. And then you track, I think, health with this stuff. I'm not sure. And then what's the next thing is doing this upside down isn't the easiest thing in the world. Here we go. And this is, I think, player stuff. Yeah, props envelope, which I should open up. I haven't opened up. I remember the props from Ptolus was pretty awesome. In fact, let's take a look and see what's in here. I have not looked at this. What is this? The red Laughter of Stone's Vineyard. Is this like, I think it's like a pass to get into a place. And here are ads. This is obviously a cocktail place. What is this? What am I even looking at? This is a very surreal, and I mean literally surreal. Oh wow, this is the Magniloquent Moth. It's a menu, I think. Can you open this up? Yeah.
It's a menu of stuff to order at this restaurant with an address. I assume these things factor into the game. This is very like what you got in the Tolis book, by the way. All sorts of cool stuff you would find in the city. There's a map of the city, I think I remember, the city that it takes place in. It's a modern game. What even is this? Are these like character sheets? Stand by, let me open this up. I guess this is turning into an unboxing video, folks. That was not my intention, but yeah, these are just blank pages for you to send messages from the Order of Getica. In all things, look beyond just yourself. That's good advice, frankly. Let's see, let's put this over here. And I thought these were like coasters or something, but I think they actually do something. I think they're actually used to track something. There's a ton of more stuff in here. There's a cloth map. Like, what are all these things? I don't know. Maybe these are just coasters, question mark. I'm perfectly down, by the way, with, and these are apparently spell counters or something. And this is a map, I believe, of the city. I love these cloth maps that you used to get in like the Ultima games. And then I think Blizzard kind of as an homage. So this is the city that this game takes place in. This is fucking cool. So I just swore in a video. I do that all the time on Twitch, but people don't always get that on the running the game videos. There's another cloth map with a bunch of symbols woven into it, like chakras or something. And then you start getting the actual books. There's an art book, and the art in this is amazing. It does a really good job of showing you what kind of stuff, what kind of people you're going to meet and places you're going to go. But at the same time, it's so weird. It is so weird. And there's 4 rule books. And I don't know what the difference between them is. There's the path, and then there's like the way and the eye. Let's see if I got them remembered correctly. The gate, the path, you can probably see the spines. The way, each one of these has amazing art in it. The key, and different symbols. There are different factions you can join. And it's got all sorts of crazy mechanics in it. It seems like it's, sufficiently crunchy to my needs. But look at this person has a book for a head. What? It looks like a lot, it looks like if Guillermo del Toro set Pan's Labyrinth in New Orleans. So this is amazing. I find this to be incredibly inspiring, both as a nerd who's a gamer, but also as somebody who now is in the business of making, print products. I would love to someday produce a product that had this kind of form factor. This would obviously be the special edition. This thing is expensive, but the actual game, I think you could just get like any other RPG.
Crazy, right? Thanks, Monty. Thanks, Charles and Tammy over at Money Cook Games. Invisible Sun seems like a major work to me, and the production values in that box are crazy. Really what it does is it makes me want to make something that has those kind of production values. Something else I bought in PDF, and then when they were available in print, I picked them up, is Mothership and Dead Planet. Dead Planet is based on Mothership. Mothership is, I can say this because I didn't make this. Mothership is very much what you would expect the Alien RPG to be. And when I saw that and I started looking through it, I'm like, this is really cool. I think there's a pretty good chance I'm actually going to run this for maybe the folks who work here. And then I saw they have it's not really an expansion. I think it's another game based on this, or it's a sequel to this. You can play this and then play this called Dead Planet, which is about your ship crashing on this dead planet and exploring it. It's super cool. It's got this neat system to use D6s to plan out the deck plan of your spaceship. It's got tons of cool sci-fi charts in here, like here's a percentile chart for different colonists you find. Here's what you find in the vault when you search the vault. And there's another one just a page later, a huge chart of the nightmares the characters start having once they land on the dead planet. Put a link to this in the doobly-doo. I just thought it was neat, and I thought it would be cool to show off. Something else I thought was neat, and it's also very heavy, is the Art and Arcana book. This is the special edition. I bought this. This was not sent to me free because I saw one of the authors was John Peterson, who is the guy that wrote Playing at the World, and this is very much, if you know what Playing the World is, and if you don't, you should. If you know what Playing at the World is, this is like a sequel to Playing at the World, I think, unofficially. It is a history of all the art in D&D, and it is very archaeological. In fact, I think they have a term called like archaeology, like the archaeology of art, where they go back and they get the original images and they show you like what art was this based on. And for instance, if you're somebody like me and you happen to know that the owlbear and the boulet and the rust monster in D&D are all based on these toys, these plastic toys you could get for like $1 in a little bag at Toys R Us or whatever, and they're like, oh great, we have miniatures, let's make up monsters for these minis. They have pictures of the actual original plastic minis, those toys, which I thought was fantastic. It's a bunch of stuff like that. The history of the art of the game. This is the deluxe edition of the book. It comes with lots of cool stuff, including this kind of replica of the original tournament module. By the way, this is what the original D&D booklets looked like. There were 3 of them that came in a box, and they had this kind of faux leatherette cover. This is the original Tomb of Horrors tournament module. This is a terrible adventure. I haven't read this. This might be quite good, but the one I'm familiar with is an adventure I think nobody should run unless they're in a very specific frame of mind and really angry with their characters. But it's amazing because it's the original adventure, which I had never seen before, including all these original illustrations. The author wrote, just drew here, show this to the characters. So, and it includes in the back all the original notes from the guy whose idea this originally was, and I thought that was Gary Gygax, but it turns out Gary wrote this adventure based on something somebody else submitted, only 4 or 5 pages of a couple of traps and stuff like that. But I was like, holy crap, it's more archaeology. It's more learning about the history of the hobby, which maybe you're not interested in, but I love that stuff. I eat that stuff up. So the Art and Arcana book, I can very strongly recommend. You don't have to go out of you don't have to go crazy and buy the deluxe limited edition. But if you're interested in the origins of the hobby, I can strongly recommend both Playing at the World and Art of Arcana. Lots of people worked on this book, by the way, not just John Peterson. He's just the name I recognized and was the one that made me kind of tip me over into saying, yep, I'm going to get it. And we spent about an hour the other day, just me and Anna flipping through this book and me being completely blown away. And she is very new to the hobby, but she loved it. She loves the history of the hobby and seeing where all these monsters came from in the original Beholder illustration, for instance, and then how these monsters' art changed over time and over editions, which I think is fantastic. Something I haven't really decided yet, and I'd like to see your comments, let me know what you think in the comments below, is what to do with all of the kind of like non-D&D content that we are creating on Twitch, like the Codenames streams, the NetHack streams. Should they go on YouTube? The reason I haven't been putting them on YouTube is because I am aware that people get annoyed when they get an alert on their phone, hey, look, there's a new Matt Colville video, and it's not a running the game video. They go, right? And so I don't want to fake people out by saying, hey, there's a new video, but it's just 3 hours of my friends and I playing Codenames. So let me know whether you think we should be uploading these things to YouTube or not, because that's going to have a big impact on my decision. Also, because I spent a lot of my time at Turtle Rock Studios introducing new players to D&D, I got frustrated with how difficult it is for players to make a decision on what they want to play using not their own preconceived notions. This would happen all the time, as they would decide, I want to play Warlock, because they played World of Warcraft and they just assumed that Warlocks must work the same way. And they would leaf through the player's handbook and just be completely overwhelmed. There's a table in the player's handbook that says, here's what the different classes are. Here's just a short sentence of what they do and what like hit die they use and stuff like that. But the players wouldn't use that. They wouldn't read that. They would be looking at the pictures and they'd be trying to read, like, they would read Rage and they'd be like, wait, none of this makes any sense to me. Of course not. You haven't played the game yet. This is the real rule for Rage, including all the noodly stuff you need to know to make it work. But you're just trying to make a decision. What kind of character do I want to play? Do I want to play a half-elf ranger? And so what I did was I wrote a document that breaks down all the classes and races that are open into what could be cards that you could just print out and hand out, and players could look at the different classes and the different races and go, oh, this looks cool. I will be a dwarf barbarian, for instance. And then somebody on Twitter named Josh Mace made a layout for them, which we'll put a link to in the doobly-doo. The goal is you print these out, you cut them out, you put them on cards, print them on cardstock, for instance, maybe print out 2 or 3 of them so the players have more than one copy to look through. And all it is an aid for new players to help them make a decision about what to play. It doesn't really, and then they can start working on the character sheet. For instance, it says here the skills you can get and stuff. It gives them a jumping off point. Then they can go to the player's handbook and see how all their noodly stuff actually works. And some of the text will need to be updated, so I'll probably make an update and send it to Josh, and he'll update the layout. But I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm looking forward to using it with a group of players, including Matt O'Driscoll, whom some of you may know, a group of players who I want to run D&D for. They've never played, to kind of get get back in the swing of things before we start the real stream. I don't want the first time I've run D&D in over a year to be live in front of thousands of people. That would be terrifying. So I want to run a one-shot for my friends, and I'm going to deploy these, and I think they will be successful. I will let you know how it goes. All right, enough of this gay banter. let's get to the Q&A.
Enough of this gay banter.
This is something I intended on doing every month, a Q&A video, and follow me on Twitter. I'll put a link in the doobly-doo. I'll put a link to Twitter. I'll put a link to Twitch. I'll put a link to our Discord. We have a great Discord that is actually super positive and has a lot of great advice, and people who are looking for answers from me can go to the Discord and usually get good answers from the community. We've got a subreddit that's pretty good, so I'll put links to all those in the doobly-doo. But if you follow me on Twitter, once a month, I'm going to post a tweet saying, hey, we're going to record a Q&A video today. If you have any questions, let us know. And that's where we're going to take questions from. For instance, Mike Prinky asks, what is your approach for minimizing the amount, this is a good question, minimizing the amount that players dogpile a skill check? I call this the skill check cascade, but dogpiling is a good word for it. In other words, everyone rolls a perception check. Everyone rolls the knowledge check. Each of them fishing, another good word, each of them fishing independently for the winning roll. That is a good question. I see this happen all the time at the table where all the players, they treat information like treasure. All the players want the reward of being the one. For one thing, they have all the skills. Every character in D&D can try any of the skills. Being proficient in something just gives you a bonus. It doesn't lock or unlock things. So the way I do it, Mike, the answer is I lock things. I restrict which characters can make which checks based on my own understanding of the scenario and the characters. For instance, I'll think, well, only an elf would know this, so those of you who are elves give me a check, or only a human, or only somebody who had lived in this area, or only somebody who'd been to this town, or only a magic user, only somebody who was, I might say, for instance, I do this all the time, only someone proficient in Arcana even has a chance of making a roll. So if you're not proficient in this skill, don't bother. To me, that is a pretty useful bar, is saying only people who have actually trained at this. Of course, the flip side of that is you always want to make sure that you're giving everyone the chance to make rolls. You don't want to say, oh, only these two characters at the table ever get to check for these things. You want to make sure that everybody's getting a chance to roll stuff. And that's typically like you guys are walking through the dungeon. Do you notice the secret door? Everybody make a roll. That's fine. As long as you are peppering your adventure with moments where everyone can make a history check to see if they know about this, or make a perception check to see if they notice something, I think it is fair to then restrict other roles based on the qualities of the character, their race, their ancestry, the things they've done, where they grew up, and also the skills they're proficient in. And I just tell people, if you're not proficient in it, you can't even attempt it. I've never had any of my players ever complain about that or ever say they thought that was unfair. They get it. They go, oh yeah, that makes sense. They might complain if the result was they never got to make a check for anything. So it's just something you got to spread around. I think the people who tend to complain about that are the people who are theory crafting. They're imagining scenarios where it's fair or unfair, but at the table, I haven't noticed any problems. It's a very successful tactic, and it's a great question. You said once in one of your videos, this is the next question from Vampire Unlife on Twitter. You said in one of your videos that fantasy was the genre to write in if you had some kind of psychological question you wanted to ask and sought to answer. What was that question for Priest? This person is talking about my first novel that came out a couple of years ago, and how well do you think you answered that question? I do fundamentally think that fantasy is a genre for raising psychological questions, and science fiction is a question for raising sociological questions. I think the best way of expressing what my idea was for Priest was exploring the notion, and Hayden says this, it's the thesis statement of the series, it's his thesis statement as a character, exploring the notion that a person is better than the worst thing they've ever done. That's very specific. In general, we're talking about ethics and morality and the notion of forgiving somebody. But Hayden is also, so Hayden is in a position to forgive people, but also enact judgment on them. And in his mind, those two things are completely separate. And you see this in the second book, Thief, where he basically forgives somebody while he is punishing them. And that is something other characters in the book have a hard time understanding how anyone can do, much less him. And it's also about compassion and the notion that the people, this is something Hayden dances around. I had a section in Priest where I very, very explicitly said this and did a deep dive into it, and then based on feedback, I cut it because it was too on the nose. But the notion that the people who most need compassion are the ones who seem least to deserve it. This is a theme that is going to run through the series, and you'll see it more in the next 3 books. Hopefully, Fighter, I will be able to work on once we get my priority is get the D&D, my current number one priority is get the D&D stream launched, so stay tuned. And then once that is off and running, then I can spend some of my spare time, some cycles after work and on the weekends, working on book 3, Fighter. Stay tuned. Kegan28 says, what's your favorite scene from 13th Warrior? 13th Warrior, one of my favorite movies, and also it used to, I don't think this is true anymore, pre-Lord of the Rings, 13th Warrior would often dominate nerd lists online on nerd forums about what's your favorite fantasy movie, and I'm like, it's not a fantasy movie. There's nothing fantastical happens in it. If anything, 13th Warrior is a science fiction novel. It asks, what if a population of Neanderthals existed and survived into the Viking Age, and that they passed on into our legends as the creatures from Beowulf. And I think probably, I don't know that I have a favorite scene per se. I definitely have favorite moments from it. And the 2 of them are when Herger, the Joyous, the bard in the group, gives Antonio Banderas' character a sword, and it's a Viking sword, and he's like, I cannot lift this. And Herger says, grow stronger. It's a great moment, which then there's a follow-up later on where he grinds his own sword. He takes the sword they gave him, which he cannot use, and he grinds it into something resembling a scimitar that he can use, and then he does some fancy sword play with it, trying to impress the guys, and it is impressive. And when he's done, one of them says, when you die, can I give that to me daughter? Which is just it shows off that sense of humor these characters have, and it also just presents the Vikings and the Arabs in an era before xenophobia was a thing. This was just another guy who looked different from another place, and what really mattered was whether he could hold his own, and once they knew he could, then he was part of the team. And that is a spirit that I find very kind of encouraging. John Kraskowski asks, a lot of folks, myself included, who run D&D or tabletop fantasy games tend to use evil wizards as big bad evil guys. I just call them bad guys. What kinds of non-arcane villains do you like? What non-arcane villains specifically do you like to use, and how do you like to run them? Well, no spoilers, but you're going to get to see the big bad evil guy of my entire world, not just a campaign. This is somebody who has been a persistent villain now in 3 different campaigns that I've run, and the Chain of Acheron game that we're intending on launching may be that campaign, depending on how it goes, depending on how far we get, depending on what the players want to do. At the end of what I would hope would be a couple of years of play, they will have the opportunity, I think, to confront Ajax. And Ajax is not well, I'll tell you the answer. What I do is I take martial characters and I give them spell-like abilities. Like these are characters they're so powerful that they've made pacts with other powers. They have magic items. They have, pet demons in their pockets and stuff like that they can deploy. So it's not just Ajax, the invincible Saint Ajax now he's some martial class. I'm not sure which. He might be an Oathbreaker Paladin. I'm not sure. I haven't decided. But he's not just I swing my sword. He has a vast panoply of abilities. If you saw my running bad guys, my running Vecna thing, he can do that kind of stuff. He's like probably 20th level, I think, or maybe like 17th or 18th level, and he's getting to the point where he's going to become immortal. And this grants him access to all this wide array of pacts that he's made with extraplanar entities and magic items he's collected. So he has a bunch of stuff at his disposal. I don't have any problem giving a bad guy the abilities I think they need to challenge the party regardless of their class. Remember that the class abilities they have are just the abilities the designers thought were neat and they should have. And you are the designer of your campaign and your villains, so feel free to look at what characters in D&D can do, and look at what monsters can do, and just grab them and give them to your bad guys. Somewhat related, Jay Taylor asks, what qualities do you think makes a good lieutenant for a big bad evil guy? And that is a complex question. It's not an easy answer. I should say, I guess the easiest way of saying it is, my lieutenants complement, they shore up the deficiencies of, and this is going to get to, we'll do a video on combat. It'll be the final video in the Getting on the Grid series, which we started a long time ago, where we talked about terrain and we talked about miniatures, but I want to talk about tactical combat, which is something that I have run for 30 years, and I feel like I know a lot about, making it easier for you to have fun and effectively run bad guys. And it's really straightforward. It's not that complex. It's not going to be like learning algebra or anything. We're just going to talk about how you have frontline fighters that have heavy armor and a lot of hit points, and you have spellcasters in the back, and how to move and position yourself to take advantage of stuff. So whatever the big bad evil guy, whatever my bad guy can do, the lieutenant is someone who shores up their abilities. And that allows me to make make it so that this character can't do everything. They can only solve certain problems at which they're very good, and their lieutenant can solve the other ones. Here's the most important ability of any lieutenant. The most important ability of a lieutenant in your game, not the big bad evil guy, but their right-hand person, is the ability to escape. Because the players are going to defeat this person, and they're going to feel a sense of triumph that they defeated the evil guy. But then the lieutenant gets away and lives to fight another day and gets promoted to become their own bad guy. Hey, you thought there wasn't going to be any good advice in this video, but there is. I try to make sure there's always good advice in a video, even if it takes a long time to get there. Quiddy Winter Chill on Twitter asks, of all the myths and gods associated with specific cultures in the real world, which fascinates you most? Well, that's interesting. I guess the real answer is pre-Islamic Arabia, which we don't really know a lot about. But that's where we get, I think, like genies and stuff like that. And I've got a pre-Islamic Arabic, or kind of, it's a mishmash of a bunch of stuff, area in my setting. I think all good fantasy settings are basically analogs for Earth. If you want to do something completely wild and different, go run science fiction. So I have my own version of that. And I'm often trying to figure out, like, what did these people believe, in 100 AD, and it's not easy to find that stuff. So that's the answer. The answer is that's the one that fascinates me most because it's the most unknown, the one I know the least about. I have a lot of affection for the Greek myths. I grew up reading the Greek myths. They had a big impact on me. Of course, you all follow Dale Kingsmill, Monarch's Factory, which somebody else had to point out that Monarch's Factory is just another way of saying king, monarch, mill, factory. I didn't get that. I'm an idiot. So of course you follow her. She talks about the Greek myths all the time. I also follow Dr. Cowboy Viking. Put a link to their content in the doobly-doo. And he talks about that guy is a professional. He is a professor of Old Norse and mythology at some university in the middle of nowhere. He used to work at Berkeley and UCLA, I think. And that guy actually does his own translations of things like the Saga of the Volsungs and the prose or poetic, I don't remember which. And so that guy, he just put up a video about how Odin is called the Allfather. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows what that word means. It's a word that only appears like once, I think, or once or twice. And they think the guy who wrote it down might have made it up and might have meant something completely different. I didn't know that. I had no idea. And I watched that video. I'm like, this is fascinating. So yeah, the notion of Odin as the Allfather probably doesn't mean what we thought it meant. So I'm interested in those things. And I'm interested in those people and the content they make. I also am super interested in the Mayan mythology and also their culture and language. I read a great book a long time ago called Breaking the Maya Code, written by a guy, I think Michael Coe, who's a linguist like Dr. Crawford. And he is one of the people that figured out how to decipher Mayan hieroglyphics. And that story is fascinating to me. If you get a chance to read Breaking the Maya Code, I very strongly recommend it. Steve B, 30 West 5th, asks, hey, Matt, love your videos. And I love yours. My question, there seems to be more focus on PCs speaking, reading certain languages, but not as much on individual calendars. In your games, how much do you use different calendars based on the languages spoken? I will tell you that I think it's the other way around. I think that D&D, there's this fantasy that we all have that language would mean something. And that you would meet people and you wouldn't speak their language, and you would find tomes of lore, but you wouldn't be able to decipher it. But actually, D&D is a magical universe in which A, basically everybody speaks common, whatever else they speak, and B, there are pretty low-level spells that will let you read or speak anything, and that kind of breaks that fantasy. So that's something that is unfortunate because I think that notion of finding things and badly translating them and coming to the wrong conclusion about what someone has said or what somebody wrote down because you were unable to translate it properly, I think that should be a bigger part of the game, but the tools that we have as players make it too easy for us to defeat that stuff. I think calendars are where we should be spending our time. I did a whole video on, let's see if we can figure out how to put a link to wherever it goes. I never know if it's on the left or the right. A card. We'll put a card up to my calendars video. I think calendars are way more important than languages when it comes to building a world because they tell you so much about the culture of the people who made that calendar. And as soon as you start learning and talking about calendars in the real world, as soon as you start looking up, like, why are things named the way they are? Why are there this many days? You discover that almost none of it has anything to do with like objective elements of reality. It's not like based on physics or anything. It's based on cultural assumptions, and it's super revealing what people thought was important. And then you can make up your own versions of those for your own game. Dan Sudaby, except it says Dan Sudaby asks, hey Matt, hello. I know this is probably a bit late. It depends on your definition. But as a seasoned dungeon master, I still get stuck on the reason why ancient civilizations or engineers or whatever would add puzzles into their structures. They are fun, but I need a story behind those challenges. Dan, that's a good question. Obviously, things are a little crazy. In D&D, the game is called Dungeons & Dragons. We can explain why some of these things are the way they are to a certain extent. In the real world, there are real things like the traps and puzzles that we see in dungeons, although they're much more kind of straightforward. And they're the things built into the pyramids, among other things, to stop grave robbers, because they were putting a whole bunch of treasure in these places and they didn't want grave robbers or tomb raiders to get to them. And so they would, the classic example, by the way, is simply a false wall or a block that blocks off a passageway so that you can't, once the place is built, the block comes down and you can't get into that passageway. These are real things that they really did to try to foil tomb robbers. So now you have to imagine, what would that be like in a fantasy world? What would that be like if a powerful wizard who can change, this is somebody who has access to wish and can change reality at their whim. What kind of traps and puzzles would they create to stop people trying to get to their lore? That's the answer. It's a thing in the real world which is somewhat mundane in the real world. Anybody that's a mason could build one of these things, then taken to a crazy extreme because of the high-powered fantasy nature of high-level wizards. So, by the way, I think then the answer should be more about who is the wizard that made these, or cleric, or high-powered person with access to reality-bending technology with spells. Who is that person and what were they trying to protect? That's the story of your dungeon. Doc Spaz, hello, Professor Spaz, says, hey, Matt, have you ever used encrypted messages in your games? How did it go over with the players? And what do you think of the premise that encrypting information could potentially shoot the players forward toward unraveling a mystery? No, I don't think I really have, actually. I tend to give the players a lot of, we've talked about this before, the players in my game tend to recover a lot of messages that the bad guys send each other as they each try to recruit the others into their own plans and schemes. I run a campaign where a lot of the bad guys are aware they each exist, and they want each other bad guys as allies, but ideally each one under the other. So they're all kind of trying to make deals and conspire with themselves and create kind of a legion of supervillains, but each of them wants to be on top, and that is a very revealing and fun way, I think, to get the players information about who the bad guys are and what other threats are going on as they're going through one dungeon, and they decided, I don't want to do this, that, or the other thing. They learn about what this, that, or the other thing are, and they realize, oh my god, we picked this thing, and now these bad guys are advancing their plot, and these horrible armies are going to be raised, or scions of Orcus are going to summon demon lords and stuff like that because we picked this thing. And that's a fantastic and I find very effective way of doing things. I actually tend to rely more on adventures, pre-published adventures, when it comes to encrypted messages and ciphers and stuff like that. Things like the Crypt of Lysandra the Mad, which we'll go over. But no, I don't really rely on encrypted messages per se, but I do make sure I get the player's information. I just tend to do it in a more narrative, character-based way. Kenny asks, once you've finished with the Ratcatcher Saga, my novels, would you consider writing in any other genre setting? Cyberpunk, for example? Maybe not cyberpunk, although I'm a huge fan of stuff like Blade Runner. Not cyberpunk, but definitely I think that I've got a science fiction series in me somewhere. Yeah. Matt the Cat, 21, all the cool people are named Matt, asks, what's a video game you have a lot of nostalgia for? Well, for one thing, NetHack, see you tomorrow night, Saturday night at 6 p.m. It's not even really nostalgia. I still play that game. Unironically, I love NetHack. NetHack is a ton of fun. Let's see. Video games I have a lot of nostalgia for. I think probably like OG StarCraft. Also, Halo. My friends and I played Halo, the first Halo, a lot. We played the first Halo. My friend Craig and I, we would get together, and every time there was a new Halo game, we would get together and play through it together on Legendary, 2-player couch co-op. We did that with Halo 1 and Halo 2, and I think Halo 3. And we played multiplayer Halo for hundreds of hours. It lay fallow for months. Then we went back to it and discovered rally mode and race mode, which gave us a whole new love for that game. So I would say probably Halo, and you will probably get to watch this. One of the things that Lars and Anna have been threatening to do, you can tweet at them to encourage them to do it, is live stream them playing original old school like Nintendo games, which I think would be a blast. I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch that. So that's something we may do. We may have like Halo night here at the office, and if we can find a way to stream it, I think that'd be a lot of fun. Last question from Dungeon Master Lee. Dungeon Master Lee asked their question for the August Q&A in October. If I ask a question now, will you still answer it in your August video? Yes. That's it, folks. Thanks for asking the questions. Thanks for the stuff you send. Thanks for your support and the time. This video, like all our videos, like all our content, is brought to you by Strongholds and Followers, which you can get a link to. It's our forthcoming 5th edition supplement for building strongholds and attracting followers. It's got tons of crunch in it. We worked on it for months. I'm incredibly proud of it. You can pre-order the book. It'll be out in PDF soon, and then early 2019 for the hardcover. Next video, hopefully next week, we will make the next Running the Game video I said we would make. We will talk about killing a character. I will see you tomorrow night on Twitch at 6 p.m. Pacific time for some NetHack. Just hang out and play a cool, fun game and be nerds. Until then, peace out.